Do British people know who is in charge of their human rights in the country and whose duty is to protect them while adhering to the Human Rights Convention and the 7 principles of public life themselves? Well, I presume most do not. It is Baroness Falkner, chair of the Equality and Human Rights Commission and a peer with the ennoblement, conferment to nobility for life, based on her noble service to the people, most of whom have paid for her. As for the Nolan principles, don't tell anyone. In family court, they abused my toddler in order to stage a case to take him away from me, knowing he'd been with me 24/7 since birth, so that they could nick my divorce settlement and private pension. And so far, I haven't been able even to find out the name of the barrister who forced me to forgo my money. Yet ironically, judges imprison ordinary people who abuse their power and steal. And back to the Queen of Human Rights, Baroness Falkner. About 18 months ago, like many times before over the years, but now to her as the Human Rights Chief, I wrote her an open letter asking why an independent inquiry had been turned down, although now I am totally against such whitewash gimmicks for life-annihilating crimes, where those who knowingly cause them still do not get any commensurate punishment. I openly copied the letter to hundreds of MPs, journalists and human rights charities whose duty is congruent with being proactive regarding abuse of power and of people. Well, certainly incongruent with looking the other way. Dear Baroness Falkner, as the chair of Equality and Human Rights in Britain, what do you think about the denial of an independent inquiry of family courts that was asked for by 123 MPs, 80+ lawyers and academics, a few journalists and hundreds of thousands of victims, including the families of those who have committed suicide as a result within the last 30+ years? It is an open secret that those courts have been sadistically abusing their power over people and habitually and gratuitously breaching human and children's rights to the point of complete life destruction. Let me list a few out of many recurrent crimes perpetrated with those quasi-courts. Total bias towards a chosen party, often a promiscuous and negligent parent, but in some cases a batterer, convicted criminal or even a pedophile. Overt xenophobia and even racism, where foreign parents married to British sociopaths are stripped of all dignity, rights and worth before losing custody of their children, followed by deprivation of all the entitled to matrimonial assets, likely due to corruption. Battered mothers being thrown out on the dole while the perpetrator gets all the matrimonial money, meaning that the Social Security is used by some in those so-called courts to fund the lifestyles of abusers and crooks, and in some cases allegedly cover for the bribes taken, according to many victims. Perjury treated as normal if perpetrated by court staff, fellow judges, Kafka's officers, social workers, lawyers, and the pet parents. In some cases, 30, 50, and over 100 pieces of perjury deliberately ignored, both by the initial set of judges and later in all the consequent trials of the victims to get justice. Victims who fiercely seek justice that they are entitled to, both according to national and international laws, and try to expose the crimes against them and their children, get intimidated, threatened with never seeing their children again, and abused ceaselessly by the judges who obsessively close ranks at the cost of all dignity, professionalism, and victims' lives and livelihoods. Corruption by moneyed abusers who obtain child custody, often by state staging dangerous incidents that include young children, all to win, has been rumored to be happening for decades. Child rapists and fathers who severely abused and neglected their families are given full or 50-50 custody to avoid paying child support to their victims, devaluing marriage, children, and justice, as parenthood starts at conception and not in court, like fathers' rights groups demand for their own selfish benefits. Children have been ripped away from devoted soul carers and even adopted based on perjury in expert reports on a huge scale, with the victims gagged and the traumatized young children scarred for life, which is child abuse by the courts meant to protect them. Family life is classed as unimportant in those ironically family courts. The monogamous are often prosecuted, and parental promiscuity and sexual deviancy almost always comes before the children, devastating the lives of family-orientated parents and obliterating the stability of the whole society. The worst fathers imaginable, and even dangerous ones, have been granted contact with their scarred children, who are often dragged screaming to the ordered contact. Devoted parents are routinely equalized with the most appalling sociopathic ones, who should never have had any children. The trend that incites sociopaths to serially produce families, cheat, move on, and shatter lives, while those who truly enjoy family life and have moral integrity are too scared to settle down, at all or again. Even the most extreme forms of mental abuse of both children and adults is totally ignored, and the abusers rewarded for their mental torture of their spouses and children, while reaction to mental abuse, the torture, punished without mentioning the cause of it, which encourages abusers to keep on abusing. While there is an astonishing amount of regulations stifling the victims with deadlines, lack of adequate procedures, rights, and legal aid lawyers, and lawyers daring to get involved with the most dubious of cases, the court staff seem to be bound by no legislations or duty to act according to the law to start with, and at every following juncture. All whistleblowers are sacked. No complaints procedures work, but are only decorative, meaning there is total anarchy and unaccountability, despite an enormous quantity of documentary evidence for serious abuse of power and even criminality, often in a serial sequence per case. You know that the media are gagged and scared of reporting on those crimes, despite thousands regularly writing to them for decades. Then, Prime Minister Theresa May, shockingly a practicing Christian, appointed Baroness Hale, who had overseen family courts for almost a decade, I understand, as the Supreme Court President, and then denied an investigation of these courts when a large number of Parliament and court professionals officially demanded it. It seems to be that most people in power do not understand that with such power there should be basic decency and responsibility, otherwise it is all fake, insipid, and shameful. That in a democracy civil servants need to be of far higher than average moral probity and not below the average bar, where they turn a blind eye to human suffering, injustice, and serious human rights abuses. May I know what you are, as a person in charge of human rights in Britain, going to do regarding these horrific crimes against humanity, and if and when you're going to give the victims of the last 3 to 4 decades a voice that they are legally and democratically entitled to. With your title and in your role, turning a blind eye should never be an option. This letter is open, meaning It will be forwarded to many campaigners and persons of interest who may like to know about this issue and possibly act upon it, as this will not be under wraps forever. I guarantee you that. After 5 months of waiting for her reply, I sent the Baroness another letter reminding her of the ring of steel formed by the perpetrators who always seem to flatten all dissenting voices with ease. 18 months on, her reply is still cowardly unforthcoming. Many of the victims presume the independent judiciary decoy stratagem demands piousness of the highest order in exchange for all those golden perks. Does it? And all those who turn a blind eye to crimes against us ceaselessly remind us of the rules and legislations they diligently generate for us to obey in exchange for the privilege of enjoying human rights like no other, albeit on paper. And joining Baroness Falkner is Baroness May, the woman who beat over 200 professionals voicing their grave concerns about family courts to deny an inquiry, even a whitewash one, let alone a pertinent full trial, as desired by the victims, smiling all the way to the bank. And joining them is Baroness Hale, who supervised family courts for almost a decade, who seems to make unconventional justice. She does indeed. And joining them is Baroness Butler-Sloss, who supervised family courts for many, many years, including when my case took place. Her portrait of the Greats adorns National Portrait Gallery. And joining them, against the people, as I know what they are saying at every corner, all robed up, heavily titled, and with riches and perks dripping off them, dozens of baronesses, dames, sons, barons, lords, ladies, their worships, and so on, including the family court president who many years ago personally warned me to keep quiet about the shocking child abuse and abuse of power, theft, and God knows what else in my case, or they would ban all contact with my distraught young child. I also wonder if the thief barrister may be among them. I would not be surprised. The problem is, their failed duty of care is not a tragicomical, lucrative pantomime one can laugh about for entertainment. It is our lives, and we matter.